Welcome to the Under One Roof Landlord and Letting Agent webinar series, made possible through the generous funding of the Safe Deposit Scotland Charitable Trust. The question and answer session will start momentarily. For those who are joining us for the first time, Under One Roof is a free, independent service that supports landlords, letting agents, owner-occupiers, factors, local authority housing officers, and others throughout the sector with issues around owning and maintaining a tenement flat in Scotland. Last year, through funding from Safe Deposit Scotland Charitable Trust, the Scottish Government, and local authorities throughout Scotland, we attained charity status, which has enabled us to hire a full-time staff dedicated to working with landlords and owner-occupiers of tenement flats and those that support them. In the coming months and years, Under One Roof will be increasing the information available on our website, our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram accounts, and through our monthly newsletter. We encourage you to share information we send out with those in your building or in your sector to help us improve the quality of tenement flats in Scotland. Over the next hour, you'll be able to ask questions of Under One Roof's tenement experts Annie Flint and John Gilbert. Annie is a housing consultant and researcher who has co-authored the Tenement Handbook and many other guides for tenement owners, community organizations, and professionals. John, the other co-author of the Tenement Handbook, is a leading authority on sustainable design in Scotland with over 44 years' experience as a practicing architect. Today's question and answer webinar will last 1 hour, with a short comfort break around the halfway mark. We encourage you to post your questions and comments into the chat box at the bottom of your screen. When asking a question, please provide your first name and a brief description of the issue you'd like to raise. If you'd like to appear on screen and ask your question directly, rather than have us read it out, please let us know. If we run out of time before your question is answered, please drop us an email with your question, or join us for the next question and answer session on Tuesday, 28th of September. Thanks for joining us. Let's begin. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Under One Roof Landlord and Letting Agent webinar series for 21-22. I'm Mike Heffron, Chief Executive of Under One Roof Scotland, and I'll be facilitating the question and answer session tonight. This webinar is the second in a series of 20 that we'll be hosting between now and next May around issues relevant to landlords and letting agents of tenement flats in Scotland. And this is the first ever session we've held dedicated just to answering your questions. Last week, you may have joined us for our webinar on noise reduction in tenements, but if not, we'll send out the link tomorrow with a recording of tonight's webinar and the noise reduction webinar as well. One final note before we begin, and just to say that the information provided in our webinars is designed to help you understand your rights and responsibilities and to understand what professionals tell you. But every building and every group of owners is unique, and so are their problems. And problems seldom come singly. So the information on the site can only act as a general guidance. It's not advice or recommended course of action, which can only be given in the light of full knowledge of your particular situation or building. When it comes to action, you should always seek professional help with anything more than a simple problem. It will generally pay in the long run. Right, now that we've got the disclaimer out of the way, we have had a few questions submitted to us in the lead up to the webinar. And let's make sure we've got everybody in here. So we've got Annie and bringing in John as well, our experts here. So say hello, everyone.
Hello, hello. Hello. This is really exciting, isn't it, Mike? You know, it's all live. We don't know what's coming up, you know.
We don't. We've had a few of those lead up questions, but this is, like I said, it's the first time that we've ever done just a session of question and answer. So yeah, we're really looking forward to seeing how this goes. And at the end, you'll have an opportunity, if you've taken part, to give us some suggestions about how we can improve it. We've got about 7 or 8 of these question answers. We're doing them the last Tuesday of every month from now through May, and hopefully beyond that if we can get some more funding for it. So yeah, without further ado, let's start out. This is a question probably for Annie, I think, and it comes from Christine. She says, after a roof renovation in a 12-flat apartment block, the other owners took 2 of the owners who would not pay to the small claims court and were awarded payment. Unfortunately, after a month of payments, they both declared themselves bankrupt, and we did not receive any more payments. This same property is now being refurbished and painted,
one of the previous owners who went bankrupt last time, along with 2 more owners, are not going to pay. Once again, we will take them to small claims court. Can we prevent them from doing the same thing again and declaring bankruptcy?
Does Christine tell us what's happening about the ownership when these owners go bankrupt? Are they actually transferring the ownership to somebody else? It would be really helpful to know that. Now, the reason I'm saying that is that if they are carrying out repairs in the future, what they could use is a notice of potential liability, which will make both the outgoing owners and the incoming owners, the people who buy the flat or who the flat gets transferred to, jointly responsible for the repair cost. And that way they should be able to get out one or other of those owners to get things paid. That notice of potential liability lasts for 3 years. It's got to be served on the title deeds, and you might need the help of a solicitor to get that served. It seems to be more difficult to do than it ought to be, in my opinion. So that's what they can do in the future. Coming back to the current situation, I'm not totally clear where all these court actions are taking place in between the properties being sold, but it might be appropriate to consider getting a charge put on the property, and that is a slightly separate legal action which they do after the small claims, which is now called simple procedures, and they are relatively simple compared with lots of other court cases. And I think we've got something about that on the website that talks about how you go about doing that. But once you've got a judgment, you've got to enforce it. And this is one of the ways of enforcing it. Now, does that sound like I've picked up all the points of the answer there, Mike? I'm not sure if it's what I've got in front of me. Let me just go through and check and see whether we've got it on screen there.
We don't.
It's not one I see on screen, Mike, so I'm not entirely certain if I picked up all the answers there.
But I think the question itself asks, and I'm just getting it up here for myself. 1 second. Basically, it has the issue of was that the property says now being refurbished and painted, and after, well, this was the original issue was that after a month of payments, they both declared themselves bankrupt, and they did not receive any more payments, and the previous owners went bankrupt last time, along with 2 more owners who are not going to pay. Once again, we will take them to small claims court. Can we prevent them from doing the same thing again and declaring bankruptcy? So I guess the question in the end was, is there anything more they can do to prevent them from doing the same thing they did before and declaring bankruptcy so they don't have to pay?
Yeah, we can't stop them from stopping themselves going bankrupt, but that notice of potential liability might be the best way out of it. And then also just check again what we say on the website about the simple procedures. I think it's Undertaking Legal Action, I think is the page title, and I think they're quite comprehensive. I've actually heard, I've been at a conference, I've heard a solicitor saying, if you want to know how to do this, read the Under One Roof website. And I was in the audience, I was really quite chuffed. I think, here's a solicitor saying, go and read what Annie's saying.
Well, you'll notice for everyone in the chat room that Jazz, who is our person behind the scenes that is doing actually all of the heavy lifting to make sure this works, she's going to be popping in links, and she has done so already on that very topic. So you can take a look off the chat room, grab the link, and if you wanted to find more information. Right, moving on to the next question. We've got another question that came in from Jeannie. And this is sort of related to, if you missed our noise reduction webinar last week, this is a nice throwback to that. And Jeannie says, I let out my ground floor flat in a refurbished tenement, 4 flats per floor and a ground plus 3 floors. My tenant has reported to me that his sleep is disturbed due to the movement of the tenants in the above flat. The floorboards, in my opinion, require maintenance. I've spoken to the letting agent, but was told nothing was going to be done. I emailed the letting agency director, but he never even acknowledged my email. I'm going to lose the tenant if nothing is done. Can you please help?
Okay, right, Jeannie. I think this is a public health nuisance. Now, the public health nuisance refers to things which are injurious to health. So you've got to be able to argue that what's affecting your tenant is injurious to his health because he can't sleep. And the people who enforce public health nuisance are your environmental health officers. So that's the first route I would try. There is another potential route, and that is to speak to the private rented section of your local authority and see if there's anything they can do with the landlord stroke letting agent. So that's the two things I would suggest on that.
On technical matters, I assume this is an Edinburgh flat on the ground floor. Just question is, have the cornices been removed, or is anything else being obviously done to the flat above? Did you have floods or anything like that? That's one thing was very common if you had a flood, or if the flat above had electrical or plumbing work, they may have taken out the deafening, so that might cause a greater problem. But the biggest problem is that the tenant above is on bare floorboards and probably walking about with shoes, not slippers. So it might be advisable to actually have a word with the tenant above to express what your concern of your own tenant below, rather than deal with the factor or anybody else. Anything else, Annie?
Annie, did you want to follow up on that, or?
Yeah, I think it's always worth trying to talk to people and just seeing if there's anything they can do. But someone has the right to just enjoy their property, and that applies to both tenants. And it may be both are being put in an impossible position because of the condition of the property. So I think it sounds like it's a question of how you're going to, push the landlord of the upper flat into doing something. But there probably are technical solutions, and as John's pointed out, and they're all on the website too, and I'm sure Jazz has posted that link somewhere.
Thanks, Annie and John. I just wanted to say welcome to our participants from around the world. I believe we have somebody from New York and somebody from New Zealand who are both landlords renting out flats in Glasgow, I believe. So welcome and thanks for taking part. I've got a question here from Liz, and I believe this is one for you, John, but correct me if I'm wrong, and Annie, pop in there if you've got something to add. Liz says that our tenement flat is in a property which has common repairs shared with an adjacent block and a commercial property as laid down in the property deeds. I presume that this is a historical arrangement due to the two blocks being owned by the same person. How do we break this association? It is not logical for us to contribute to repairs for common areas in another block to which we have no access. As far as the commercial property is concerned, this is a restaurant on the ground floor of the block we are part of. One of the recurring problems is with the drains getting blocked, which we suspect is caused by fat from the Chinese restaurant. Any advice on how we should deal with this, please? It has proved expensive to have the problem remedied, and the restaurant owners have been unwilling to accept responsibility. Should we be looking to block off access to the roof space above our flat from the neighboring tenants to reduce the risks of A, potential fire spreading, and B, security? If so, do you have any advice on how to do this as cheaply and effectively as possible? Well, it looks like there's three questions from what I can see here. Maybe we just take the first one around the historical arrangement due to two blocks being owned by the same person. How do we break that association? Andy, do you want to address that one?
Yeah, the only way you can break this is to actually get the title deeds changed, and that needs every single owner to agree to change it. And you could be facing a cost of about £500 each, maybe, to get that change made. It's pretty expensive. That is the cast iron way of dealing with it. But it's a lot of money tied up in just changing title deeds, and you maybe just have to suck that up. You can make individual arrangements. So kind of on a repair by repair basis, you could agree that it will just be the owners of Block A that pays, and they don't charge the owners of Block B, and vice versa. Now, those arrangements are fine as long as all the owners are agreeable, but it's just kind of a personal contract between the owners concerned. If an owner, if ownership changes and you get a new owner moving in and they don't agree with that, a new owner in Block A says, I would much rather we got owners in Block B to pay as well because that halves my cost, then they can't do anything about it. It's an agreement that's been made with a previous owner. So the only cast iron way of dealing with it is to change title deeds. And while you're doing it, you might as well do some decent things with your title deeds, like set up a building reserve fund, turn yourselves into a development management association where you've got, legally constituted owners association, sort out all these grey areas about common repairs and things like that. If you're going to spend about 500 quid on sorting out your title deeds, get everything done at once. So that's my answer for the first bit, Mike.
Well, I'll cut in with the second bit, which is about the Chinese restaurant. Obviously, I'm not just too sure where the drains go, and I'm sure you don't either, because maybe there's a common drain that is shared between the two tenements, and that may be an issue in terms of separating the responsibility. But even so, any restaurant on the ground floor, it should have a grease trap to collect grease before it goes into the drain. So that's something that should be checked. And if they don't have a grease trap, I think you should inform environmental health about that, who would be interested to hear that.
Yeah, environmental health are really good at doing these things, actually. And they do inspect licensed premises and premises selling hot food. Yeah. And they can take away that person's license. So,
however, it might not be the Chinese restaurant. We may be blaming the Chinese restaurant when it's something else. It could be a damaged pipe that allows the thing to be blocked all the time. So really, to know what's going to happen, you should get a CCTV, a camera survey done by a drainage firm, and that'll record a video of the drain under the close, and they'll know where the blockage is, if there is a blockage, what the problem is, and there should a video of it which they can give to you, and you can use that as evidence to take to the environmental health or the factor to sort out the problem. So that might be worthwhile doing, and they're not really expensive, these surveys, but it's well worth doing if you've got a problem. Finally, on the roof space issue, I'm surprised that you've got a common roof space with another tenement, because really you should, the two stairs of the two tenements should be isolated. So there should be an independent wall, a fire break between the two tenements. Basically, that party wall was meant to carry on up through the roof and exhaust about a foot above the slates. However, if you don't have it, how could can you build it up in brick? Well, you could, but you'd have to make sure that the bearing wall that it was going to be built on was okay. But you can build a firewall with plasterboard, using a metal frame, partitions, and double sheeting the plasterboard on both sides of the new wall. So it can be done. Yes, there is an expense in that, but it should be done. And if it isn't, then again, that's something that maybe you should ask building control to look into, if not the fire authority. Anything else on that, Annie?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I can add much to that, John. I think you've got it there on the fire issues, I think.
Okay.
Great. We've got a question this time with a picture. So can we get the picture up, Jazz? Right, there we go. And it's from a theme. It says, I have been highlighting this to the factors and they're not taking it seriously. Is this subsistence?
Subsidence.
Subsidence. Subsidence is a very different thing. My apologies.
It's a crack in a windowsill. It's very hard. There's just that one image. It's a close-up of something. I mean, there's cracks all over the place. If this is a red sandstone tenement, is in Glasgow. Do we know where it is? How tall is the tenement? Is it 3 or 4 stories? I don't know. But there was a lot of undermining in different areas in Glasgow, and there was soft ground in Edinburgh as well. So, tenements are always subsiding, and maybe at different rates. Now, depending where this tenement is, it might be an old crack caused by previous subsidence and may have settled, and maybe there's been some strengthening work. I think of one of the previous pictures that Jazz showed me, it looked like there'd been repairs underneath the sill with cement repairs. Sorry.
The person you're calling isn't accepting your call.
I don't know. Switch that machine off. Yeah, that picture there's a cement repair underneath the sill, and the sill is damaged as well. So it's been repaired, and it looks like the lintel below might have a steel lintel underneath it, which shows it's been reinforced as well. So they've known about this before.
He really wants to get a hold of you, John.
Right.
I thought someone just picked their phone up and throw it away the other day.
Yeah, it doesn't go off the hook. It's one of these things, I don't know why. So I'll just switch it off if I can, and hopefully they don't call back. So I think the thing is to know if it's happened before, and obviously that sill should be repaired, and the cement repair should be done properly. So that would help. I don't think you're going to fix the subsidence. I mean, you never know. There may have been consolidation works in the past. Certainly in Govan Hill was a lot of consolidation works, and other areas had steel bracing in and that sort of thing. Excuse me.
Find one for me to answer while John deals with that, Mike.
Yes, I'll mute John there for a second. Annie, I've got a question for you. Let's see. Paris. Yes, I am listening in from New York. So welcome, Kirsty. I rent out my tenement flat in Glasgow in a building without a factor. We used to have a close and active building of residents, so repairs were never an issue. As old residents have left or passed away, it's been harder to coordinate joint repairs. I've tried unsuccessfully to organize a factor. Any advice on how I can organize this?
Yeah, and this is kind of what I was talking about earlier on when I was saying that, one owner can leave, a new owner come in, and they're just not going to cooperate in the same way as previous owners. This is quite a hard one. You just need to keep going with people and just trying to sort of illustrate to them what the cost of disrepair is. We've seen numerous cases of hugely expensive works being required on properties, often due to a simple lack of maintenance. And I think you just have to keep going on at owners to say that, look, spending money now is saving money later. It is tricky to try and make owners totally aware of their maintenance responsibilities. Sometimes it does take a major repair being required for owners to suddenly wake up to these things, and it's very sad if that's the situation. But just keep pressing on with people, and if you've got an immediate repair that needs done, look at enforcing repairs page on Under One Roof. There may be a number of solutions for you there, but in general, you just need to just keep going on at people. And it's difficult. Well, it used to be a lot more difficult from New York than it is now. Just keep trying to get people interested. I think that's the best thing I can suggest. Try and convene Zoom meetings. If you can get a core of you, sort of 3 or 4 of you, that helps. Try and build up, that core of people who can start doing something, and that can often help get other owners involved.
Annie, just on that too, the next question from John is somewhat similar. Is they have a tenement flat in Edinburgh's Lawn Market, have a pub, 3 shops, and several council-owned flats. The council used to deal with the repairs, but only do urgent matters now, so the block is deteriorating. What do I do? Because no one seems interested in dealing with common maintenance issues. So this is, again, something very similar as far as sort of engaging with the people and how to do that.
Yeah, Edinburgh's got a very good shared repaired service, and they work quite closely with, I think they've got what they call a mixed tenure improvement group as well, where they work with owners, who share communal properties with them. I think Edinburgh, like a lot of other councils, is just really struggling to try and get things done through, continual lack of resources. And, recently all the local authorities have had to try and deal with COVID issues, and it has taken their attention, and probably quite rightly so. I would speak to the shared repaired people and see if there's anything they're willing to do. This question doesn't say whether there's anything immediately needing done, but that might be worth just seeing if we get any further response on that. If there is a particular problem that needs to be tackled now, then we could maybe have a look at that and make suggestions, probably on the same line as the enforcing repairs issue, I think. I'm sorry, it's not much an answer to people, is it, really?
Can I add something?
Go ahead, John.
Well, if Kirsty is from New York, Edinburgh City Council has a shared an app for maintaining tenements, which might be useful if you get the names of the other owners on board to use that application. You can download it, I think. I'm sure Jazz can post it on our website somehow. But that might be useful if you're working from New York.
Shared repairs app. And if you go on the Edinburgh Council website, I think there'll be a link to it there. It's a really innovative thing that they've done. But what you do is you sign up to this, and you can send a note about the app to all your co-owners and get them to join up on this app. And then the app will allow you to communicate between owners. It'll allow you to post up photographs of the repair problem. And when you've got owners to agree it's a problem, then the app will send those photographs and the request for a quote to traders who are part of Edinburgh's Trusted Trader scheme. And those trusted traders can put their quote back on that the shared repairs app. And then you can use, John's got it.
Yeah, Novaville.
Novaville are the developers of this.
That's the developers, yes, Novaville.
Yeah. And then the app also allows people to pay online via one of the new online banks. And as I said, Edinburgh are very good at doing these things. And this is something which the council sponsored and has spent 2 or 3 years pushing forward. So it might be an answer here, but, it does rely on all the owners being interested. But, it kind of acts in the way that a factor does in trying to get things taken forward and arranging repairs. Of course, factors are a Glaswegian thing, so quite different.
One more question, and then why don't we'll take a short break. And in that break, we actually, if you can stretch your legs, get a tea. We've actually got a little video that we can play about a little talk I gave. The Edinburgh Historic Trust had their festival this week, and I spoke a little bit on the Royal Mile, the Royal Mile, on the subject of and the importance of making sure that your gutters are cleaned. I am that popular at parties. I have good conversation, good conversational cocktail chat. So we'll play that during the cover break, and then after we play the video, we'll come back. But and answer more of your questions. We've gotten a ton. Keep them coming. And I should note once again, if we don't get to your questions, drop us an email at info@underoneroof.scot, or just find it on the website with your question and copy and paste it from the chat room. If we don't get to it, we will get to it over the next week. We'll make sure that we get answers back to everybody who gets in touch. We're also doing a question and answer next month as well. So if you don't hear it this month, but you enjoyed it, you can come back and ask next month. But one last question. Charles asks, I would like to know if you can tell me anything about pavement lights. Do they belong to the tenement building, or are they privately owned?
Yeah, I think they do belong to the pavement, because they exist because there was a basement, and the basement was part of the tenement. But it might be part of the ground floor property. So part of that thing. A lot of basements were built below pubs, obviously to contain the beer, but also below shops, and sometimes because the ground level required basement foundations, but the pavement lights let light into the basement areas. They're all rusted over, and a lot of them are tarmacked over now, and water sort of penetrates those areas. But it's still a problem of the tenement maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, although these pavement lights belong to the tenement, normally speaking, I think people do need to check their title deeds as to whether they are a common repair. And the chances are, if it's one of these very old flats, the title deeds don't say anything about it. And if that's the case, then the tenement management scheme might apply. Now, the tenement management scheme is part of the Tenement Scotland Act 2004, and it comes into operation when either the title deeds are silent or they are unworkable. And it tends to say that anything which belongs to only one flat or is used by only one flat, including windows, is the responsibility of that flat owner. So it may actually be this is an individual repair by one of the tenement owners rather than the local authority. That clarifies that, Mike, I hope.
Great, thank you. Both will take a short break here. Be back in about 7 or 8 minutes. We've got a little bit of time. In the meantime, you can take a little look at this video from the Edinburgh Traditional Building Festival, which took place last week. And we can also post a link to the full schedule. There were a number of events, and my bit of it was just a small bit of a larger tour of the Royal Mile, which you may find interesting, and also, if you've got friends that live abroad, they may find very interesting as well if they've never been to Edinburgh. So we'll have a little watch of the video, stretch your legs, and we'll see you back here in a few minutes.
We're now joined by Mike Heffron from charity Under One Roof. Under One Roof is set up specifically to provide detailed, independent and impartial advice on repairs and maintenance to tenement flat owners in Scotland, whether they are owner-occupiers or landlords, as well as the factors and others that work with tenement owners. Hello Mike, lovely to see you. The Under One Roof Scotland website is full of beautifully illustrated and articles and information, but can you tell us a little bit more about how important the tenements are and the wider work that you do?
Thanks, Hazel. If you live in a tenement flat where the cost of maintenance and repairs of your building is a responsibility you share with others in your stare, then you already know the challenges that exist. Historic and older stone-built buildings are a beautiful part of our national cultural heritage, but that comes at a cost, and if vigilance is not maintained by those who are responsible for its upkeep, that cost can be heavy. And it's the maintenance and repair of these treasures that we live in that makes up such a large part of sustainability. For buildings to be sustainable, they first have to be kept standing. And when buildings aren't looked after, they crumble, and in some cases, they collapse. That's why it's so important for tenement owners to work together to ensure the future of their building. Now, let's take one example of an issue faced by all owners in older tenements: keeping your building dry, looking at both the consequences for not doing so and actions that you can take to avoid those severe consequences. Now, to start with, and this may sound obvious, but it bears repeating, a dry building is a warm building. No matter how much insulation you put in, if the building is wet, it will remain cold. And the more spent to keep your home warm, the more carbon emissions increase, and well, you know the rest. So what's one way to keep your old, beautiful tenement building dry and warm? Well, maintaining the gutters. This should be a priority for all tenement owners. Replacing loose slates on the roof is important, of course, but when there's a loose slate, the damp can be pretty localized. However, when gutters are blocked, water goes all the way down the building, which prevents the stone from drying. Now, here in Scotland, stone is always getting wet. But when gutters are blocked, the water is repeatedly pushed down the specific areas of the stone facing of the building. And when it can't dry, perhaps because the wrong kind of mortar has been used, the water comes out of the face of the stone. And when that happens, stone peels away, timbers rot, and the building starts to crumble. Eventually, serious repairs will be needed, and alongside those repairs, serious repair bills. There's even the possibility of damage so great that you could lose your home. The consequences of not managing things as simple as gutters is scary to hear, I know, but it doesn't have to be this way. Now, working together with owners in your building, you can draw up a plan to ensure this doesn't happen. Now, the first action you can take is to reach out to your owners in your building about setting a meeting to discuss maintenance and repair, both current needs and future ones. Ideally, you would want to form an owners association, one that meets regularly and is set up so responsibilities are shared and don't fall on the shoulders of just yourself. Once you form such a group of some or all of the owners, you want to prioritize getting the building properly inspected by a competent surveyor. And if you're in a historic building, you should look for a surveyor with specialist skills in this field. Now, what you want is for them to identify what needs repaired and when, and to give you a maintenance plan covering works needed yesterday and in years to come. Now, if you can't get owners to agree to a survey, which could cost maybe just £1,000 or £2,000 between all the owners, then you can carry out your own DIY building survey and use this to convince owners that action is required. Now, the key things to look out for when doing the survey yourself are straining or clear cracks in the pipes, often visible by discoloration of the wall under the affected area caused by constant water leakage, and algae, moss, or any other kind of plant growth on the building, a clear sign that the stone is not drying out or where blockages may be occurring. Once you've identified that there's a problem that needs addressing, you'll need to report back to the other owners of the building, get contractors to quote against a proper specification, and then get a majority of owners to agree and pay their share. Now, I make that sound simple, but it's not. However, it's not close to impossible either. Check out the free, independent, and expert advice and information available from Under One Roof website, as well as our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram accounts, on how to take action on all of these steps and what to do if other owners won't agree to critical work. That website has plenty of resources to help with the ins and outs of finding and reaching out to owners, how to set up associations within your stair, and DIY building survey templates. Maintaining tenement housing is an action that each owner is responsible for, but you're not alone. Each and every person who owns a flat in your stair has the same motivation to keep their building dry, warm, and well maintained, and ultimately sustainable.
Great. I would thank the presenter, but the presenter was me. So thank you all for sticking around. And looks like just about everybody is, so that's fantastic. We have a lot of questions to get through. And so why don't we just sort of crack right on with it? So we've got a question here from Marina, and Marina says that she is the landlord for 2 flats in the same tenement in Midlothian. I have coordinated repairs, approximately £100,000 in the past, and thankfully all flat owners cooperated. I'm now trying to organize a regularly monthly payment from all other flat and shop owners to cover small repairs and monthly stair cleaning. 2 owners do not respond to emails, phone calls, or texts. What can I do to ensure all owners behave in a fair way and contribute? Annie, do you want to take that one on? I know you disappeared there for a second, but I think you might have heard me.
Yes. Things doing funny things. They always do with these things, don't they? I missed the first part of that, Mike. I got the bit about trying to get these 2 owners who aren't cooperating. What was the...
And so they're a landlord for 2 flats in the same tenement in Midlothian and have coordinated repairs of approximately £100,000 in the past. Thankfully, all flat owners cooperated, now trying to organize a regularly monthly payment from all other flat and shop owners to cover small repairs.
Right, okay.
And such.
Yeah, you are doing all the right things. I want to know this woman, you know. This is brilliant. She's organised £100,000 of repairs and she's trying to get owners to save. I mean, this is absolutely great. And this is the kind of thing we really want owners to do. Now, if you can't get these owners to contribute on a regular basis, that in some ways is their problem, you know. The point of saving on a regular basis is that you're spreading out the cost of repairs so that you don't end up with a huge chunk of things coming into your budget when you can't cope with it. If these owners don't want to take prudent financial action, that's their problem. You know, they are still responsible for the cost of those repairs. You know, that just because they're not contributing to your maintenance fund, it doesn't let them off. But just keep going as you're doing. You know, I want to know you. You're the kind of person we want.
Great, thanks, Marina. Thanks, Marina. I've now got a question from Mary. Mary says, if work is being done in a part of the building tenement/tenement, when should you inform your insurer, and what responsibility do they have if something goes wrong? In recent experience, our building insurance for our individual flat refused to cover communal areas.
John, do you want to pick that one up, because this is when
Well,
work.
I mean, you should have a communal building insurance, and certainly if you've got an individual insurance, you should inform your insurers that work is going to happen, and what that work is. They'll want to know that, and if you don't, that could nullify your insurance. So if something goes wrong, so make sure you do inform them. But I think I would encourage you to get a common insurance policy as well. And also, I'd say that the builder, if there is a builder involved in this, they should have insurance to cover their work as well, and third-party insurances. So,
Great, thanks, John. We have a question here from Jeet. Hi, we have a flat in Glasgow. Our flat is an attic conversion. There are 5 flats, including us. We have to fix roof. That is a communal roof, so 2 of the landlords agreed to pay. One flat owner is not picking up the phone since he knows he has to pay, and the last property, which is boarded up since it had a fire in that flat. The bill to fix it is around £3,000, and I do not know how to go from here as our property is affected and we are on the top floor. Can you please let me know what would be the best way to go about things?
Right. Okay. Well, this sounds like it could be a duty to maintain issue if you have a minority or majority of owners who won't pay. But I think here the situation is a majority have agreed. I think that's in the question, isn't it? So that majority decision binds those minority owners. They have to go ahead with this repair because it's maintenance. And maintenance is a majority decision of owners, unless, of course, you've got totally different title deeds. I mean, do check your title deeds first in all of these things, because sometimes they do say something just a bit weird and not common sense. So check your title deeds first. But, you know, I wouldn't mind betting that as this is maintenance, you just need a majority of owners to agree, and the minority have to go along with that. Now, if they won't pay, then you've got 2 options. One, the first thing to do is to speak to the council about whether they would use their missing shares provisions. Now, missing shares is a way in which the local authority can help. And effectively, what they will do is they will step in and pay the share of any owner who won't or can't pay. Now, you've got to get their agreement to use missing shares before you start the work, and you've got to make sure that you carry out all the work in exactly the right way, so that you've gone through all the kind of notifications that are required. And the council will advise you on this and how you go about doing it. Now, so I mean, effectively, you are going to be going through all the procedures again to make sure that you follow them, to make sure that these owners are given a chance to participate in the decision that you're making. But once you've gone through all of those things and they still refuse to pay, then the council will step in and pay on their behalf. And they will add a big admin fee of several £100s. And they will then charge a huge interest rate of about 8% on the outstanding cost until owners have paid. And in those circumstances, most owners just give in and pay. So, missing shares. Now, sometimes the cost of the repair is a bit low. You know, the council will only take this kind of action if repairs are above a certain level. If the missing shares thing won't work, then what you have to do is just, you've done all the procedures, you've gone through things in the right kind of way, you carry out the work, you will have to pay the contractor. I mean, you can't let the contractor suffer here. So between you all, you've got to pay, you know, the missing shares of those owners who won't pay up. But you then need to take those owners to the small claims court. And we had a question about that previously. And I'm sure the links to all those pages are already up on the chat, you know. Do you think I've answered the question there, Mike?
Annie, I think you have. A couple of things. We did have somebody say that in the comments section. Susie said that if the flat's in Glasgow, and it is, there's a majority agreement, which there is, that the council has a pretty good missing shares scheme. Let's say that five times fast. And the other thing is, do you want to? Why don't we move on with some other questions? I was going to say you could have a brief discussion of what duty to maintain is, but why don't we move on with it? We've got a ton of questions, so there is information. If it was a minority, you could look up the duty of maintain on our website, and there would be more information there. But we've got so many questions. Why don't we just crack on with it? And I should note too that if any of the questions are answered, again, we didn't quite get to what the heart of what your question was, or you wanted to do a follow-up, please send us an email at info@underoneroof.scot, and we will follow up with you over the course of the next week. Let's see here. We've got a question. Let's see, check the next one. Nick says they are a private owner of a flat in Aberdeen. The close is in a poor state, and to the best of my knowledge, hasn't had any maintenance in over 20 years. There are 4 flats in the block with shops at the bottom floor on either side. And seeing the actuals. Oh, wait. Yes, there we go. Flat below has been the flat below me has been repossessed, and there are 2 flats on either side and shops on the ground floor. My question is what is my position in being able to enforce work to be carried out on the communal staircase, which is not any work done in it in 20 years?
Okay, so the work on the common staircase. This is maintenance. Maintenance includes cleaning, painting, etc., etc. So you need a majority decision of owners. And after that, the answer is pretty much the same as it was, you know, in the previous question about going ahead with things. You know, try missing shares, and then, you know, if need be, if you've gone through all the right procedures, then you may end up in the small claims court. Simple procedures, as they're properly called. You may have more difficulties with the flat that's been repossessed because mortgage companies really don't like paying out on these things. You know, they try and dispose of things as quickly as they can to avoid those kind of responsibilities. I would think maybe protect your position with a notice of potential liability. We talked about this at the head of the webinar, and this is the notice which makes the cost of repairs jointly, or the 2 owners, the outgoing owner and the incoming owner, jointly liable for the repairs cost. And generally, you know, that the payment for it gets shaken out in the conveyancing process. You know, effectively, the new owners, solicitors say, you've got to take the cost of this repair off the price I've offered for the flat, and I will then take up the cost of paying. So get the majority decision, notice of potential liability. But John, I would have a bit of a concern as well that this property hasn't had anything done to it for 20 years. I mean, do you think they should be getting a proper survey done of things?
Well, it depends what the problem is. Aberdeen tenements, I think, sometimes had timber stairs. Whether the timber stairs over the stonework, I'm not sure. It varies a bit. So the stairs may be just badly worn, and it may be difficult to improve them without major work. So who would survey them? Yeah, an architect would survey it, but you might need to get more advice depending on the problem, really. And I mean, it could be the balusters and the handrail. It could be all sorts of things. So without, maybe if you've got some photographs of the problem of the stair, we could advise you better. Yes, yeah. That would be a good idea.
I was thinking a bit more widely, John, that if nothing's been done in 20 years, there's going to be a backlog of maintenance there.
Oh, yeah, the whole building.
Yeah, and it's worth getting a professional inspection done of the whole property and asking whoever's doing that inspection to give you a maintenance plan.
Yeah.
That you tackle the most important repairs first of all, and also the maintenance plan will give you an idea about how much you've got to save, how much finance you've got to work out to get through, a full program of repairs.
Yeah, absolutely.
One day we'll all figure out how to unmute our mics before we talk. So thank you, John and Annie, for that. I've got a question from Sarah Rogers. Our Glasgow flat has had internal damage due to water ingress from the roof, which is ongoing for 6 years now. We have had some repairs done by the factors, which haven't resolved the issue, but each time the factors close the case after undertaking repairs. This means that we need to get majority consent by owners each time for more work to be done. We've failed to do this for several years. We now have consent again, but the recent repairs were for a different part of the roof that affect the neighboring flat in the close, which also didn't stop the water ingress. Anyway, would we be able to organize repairs ourselves without consent from the other owners? Could we bypass the factors and use an independent contractor? What comeback do we have for the repairs that we've already paid for that haven't been resolved by this issue? So a number of things in there.
Shall I crack off on this one, John, and then maybe you can pick up afterwards? It sounds to me as if what's been done of the past few years is patch repairs. With this patch this time, this patch the next time. And, each patch repair may have been done perfectly, but it's a patch and maybe the whole roof needs to be tackled. And I think factors will have tended to take the easy path. They know it's going to be hard to get all the owners to pay up for doing a proper job. So they'll just tend to keep going down the patch route because they know at least then they can get something done to resolve the immediate problem. But I think it sounds like you need to get your roof properly inspected, and you probably need to get major repairs done on your roof. And it will be cheaper to get that major repair done than to keep getting people up and doing patch repair after patch repair after patch repair. You can do it yourselves, but I would say generally that if your factor knows owners are willing to pay up, they will organise. So, speak to your other co-owners, say to them you think the thing to do is to get a major repair done rather than keep shelling out on useless patch repairs, and get them to agree to get the factor to organise a roof inspection and then to implement works after that. John, you want to add to that one?
Yeah. Annie, can I just follow up with a quick, and this comes from the chat actually. Ian had mentioned more generally, I think, to a different question, but it's a very good point. Is what do you do about the issue around those who can't pay rather than they refuse to pay?
Okay, right, can't pay. Well, 2 or 3 things. First of all, get everybody to go and get financial advice. Don't go and single out a particular owner and say, Mrs. Smith, I know you can't pay. Get all owners to go and get proper financial advice about how they can pay for repairs. And this may be getting advice on how to take out loans. And taking out a loan, although you're going to be paying interest on it, the interest rates are so low at the moment, the cost of repairs are going up faster. So it's worth taking out loans. Now, it may be people feel they just can't afford to repay a loan, but they may have a lot of equity tied up in their property. So they may have paid off a huge amount of the mortgage. The property will have increased in value. There could be a lot of free equity, and they may be able to get equity release loans. Now, you see these advertised on TV all the time, ways of taking a foreign cruise or buying a fast car. I would never remortgage my house. That's effectively what you're doing for something like that. But to keep it in good repair, worth doing. So that's the two things for owners who can't afford to repay. If they won't go down any of those routes, then you're going to the stage of simple procedures, as we've mentioned before, and then getting a charge lodged against the property so that when the owner comes to sell, money is released to the owners because it's a debt that's been incurred and it's set off against the property. Does that seem to deal with that one as well, Mike?
Yes, and John, was there anything you wanted to add in on that?
Yeah, it's just regarding the previous repairs, which were probably all appointed by the factor, and he probably was concerned about the cost of it, because the cost of roof repairs is influenced by the amount of scaffolding that required. And if they're trying to avoid scaffolding, they may have sent a roofer up without scaffolding, or even just a small tower scaffold. And it probably only covered one small area. So it's hard to go back and say that would have fixed the whole roof, you know. So it's difficult with very piecemeal repairs to hold anybody responsible. If there was a proper full roof repair, yes, you would have a bill of quantities and a specification, and you could have gone back to the builder to say, well, this failed, you know, you got to go and fix it. So, okay.
Great. We've got a few more questions and just a few more minutes of the webinar. So let's see if we can get through. We'll do a rapid round of answers from John and Annie, and I'll try to get through those questions as quick as I can. And like I said, if we don't get to them, we will get back to you. So Mary asks around to an adjacent block and shop. 3 of us, 2 blocks in the shop, share the back court. Our constant issue is fly tipping and rubbish built up in the back court. Council is a bit no bother, partly due to the back lane is a private lane. Any advice? Can we go ahead and install CCTV so to get some evidence?
Oh, hi, Mary. Yeah, tricky one. Not really, not so much a tenement issue, but it's a problem that's happening in a tenement. As far as I know, you can install CCTV to try and find out who's doing it. And if it comes down to it being the shops who are tipping, then environmental health, licensed premises, things like that, you know, they should pick up on that, I hope. Have we got that one, Mike?
Well, just quickly go through them. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good start on that one. One from Chaz. I have a house that is part of a tenement. Before September 2014, we paid 15.04% of our share as our share of the deeds. Since then, we pay 15.49 as our share of the deeds. How is that raise possible? Any thoughts?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, this sounds like it's a tenement where shares are paid by rateable value, and the rateable values went out in something like 1980, and a lot of work's been done on a lot of properties since then, which would change the rateable value. I would question. I think this might almost be a case where you could say this is unworkable and that the shares should be changed to what they are in the tenement management scheme, which is either equally if the houses are all of very similar sizes or by floor area. But this may just be a question of arithmetic. You know, it's not that far out, but I mean, just reading behind the scenes, this sounds like what that situation is. Just see whether it's now unworkable because flats have changed a lot in size and they're very different to what they were in the 1980s.
Thank you, Annie. Why don't we do a couple more here? Let's just back up a little bit. Sarah had asked a multi-part question. I don't think we got to one bit of it, which was a question around bypassing the factor and using an independent contractor. Our factors use a company that we don't think does very quality work. What are the recourse you have when you have a factor that doesn't do quality work?
Okay, so this is a two-parter in itself, isn't it? The first thing is, can you organise your own contractor? Well, yes, in theory you can, but you've got this problem about who is going to be responsible, because you can't have kind of group contracts in Scotland, and that's one of the reasons why we want the law changed. And we want to have owners associations that legally represent owners and can act on behalf of all of the owners. So that's the first problem. Contractors may not be willing to work with a group of owners because they're worried about how they're going to get repaid. You may find it difficult to get contractors. If it is just these questions about the patch repairs and, you know, the contractors are doing a good job, but they're doing the wrong job, I think you just need to speak to the factor about that. Factors do have a duty to follow up on the quality of repairs. And if they don't, you can, if necessary, go to the first tier tribunal. But I think you ought to be speaking with your factor about this and just putting your concerns to them, and just establishing what the situation is and what you can do to try and get your group of owners together, working on things.
Great, thanks, Annie. We'll get through. Let's see if we can do a couple more here. If flooding comes from a pipe within the flat above my flat, does that above flat owner pay for the repairs to my flat, or must I claim my own insurance? And that's from CL.
Yeah, if the flat owner above, if it's his or her pipe that's leaking, then it's their responsibility to deal with things. Quite often they won't. People end up claiming on their own insurance and then trying to get the excess paid by the owner of the flat above. It can be a tricky one, and it's one that comes up quite frequently. But again, talk to the flat owner up above. I don't know whether they'll be able to claim on their insurance, because insurance won't generally pay for something that is negligence or a lack of maintenance. But if it's caused by any other kind of act of God, they used to say, then their insurance would pay up, and it should pay for covering the cost of your redecoration as well.
Great, thanks, Annie. The last one we'll do for tonight is a question around in a communal property with, say, 3 or more dwellings, would it be beneficial to have legislation requiring a factor to be appointed? Quite possibly this could be an entire separate webinar discussing the legislation. It may be the thing to touch on, rather than what we think would be beneficial legislation around factors, would be maybe do we want to touch briefly of what's in the Scottish Government's plan of work around the work that we've been doing, those 3 areas that we've been working on with the cross-party working group for the past few years.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about owners associations is that they're not only acting on behalf of all owners, they've got that legal entity. They've got lots of other provisions as well for good maintenance of a tenement. And they require there to be a manager. And it doesn't say the manager has to be your factor, although it could be. It just has to be the manager. So it could be an owner somewhere. So, and ideally that person would know what they're doing as well. And they get competent professional advice when they need it. The Property Managers Association of Scotland has said that that there should be compulsory factoring. Glasgow City Council, when they offer grants now, do say to people, if you want the grant, you've got to get a factor in place. They do this to make sure there's proper maintenance. I just think the real problem is the totally unfactored properties. I think there can be really well organised groups of owners who self-factor and who do have a good management arrangement in place. I mean, we heard from one owner who's organised £100,000 worth of repairs and is getting her co-owners to start chipping in on a regular basis. That is probably a well-managed property where they're doing the self-factoring well. But I think those provisions for having compulsory owners associations would probably do the trick myself. I don't think we necessarily need to say we've got to have compulsory factoring by a registered commercial or registered social landlord factor.
Annie, can I throw one last one? Are you willing to stick around for one last question?
Yeah, just go for it, Mike. We're here.
Mike, I mean, there's a couple
go ahead, John.
Answer a couple of questions which were put. One was about the sill that was cracked, the structural, and was it a common repair? Well, if it's a stone sill, it usually is a common repair, although you'd have to check your deeds. It's a timber sill would be an individual repair. So that's one thing. And the other one was a patch. Somebody had a damp patch inside. And I needed more information about that, because you can get damp patches for all sorts of reasons. What sort of wall? Is it on an outside wall or an internal wall? Is it above a fireplace or not? More information is needed before I can answer that. Okay.
And please drop us an email with that more information. We'll make sure we'll get that over to John, and we'll get you an answer on that. One last one. We've got more coming in, so I'll put a stop to this one. But I think it touches also on the factor question. So I thought it'd be an interesting one to touch on, which is our factor owns 4 flats out of 9, I assume, in Stair. We need a 2/3 vote to replace them. Therefore, we can't get rid of them. Is that legal?
Yes, I think it is actually. Check your title deeds is the first thing, because it may say that this is a simple majority. And generally questions about the appointment of the factor go on a majority basis. But sometimes it can be written into the deeds or not mentioned at all, in which case you're going back to the Title Conditions Act, which says that you need a 2/3 majority. I think there are ways of doing it. I would need to go back and check on all of that, Mike. Maybe it's something we should do a newsletter about, and pick it up there,
It sounds like an excellent newsletter question. So we'll see what we can do, Charles, to put that into our next newsletter. And if you haven't signed up to our newsletter, we put it out monthly now, and we advertise all the different events that we are doing, all the different webinars that are taking place. So if you can register for our webinars, for our newsletter on our website. And I encourage you to do so. We also have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We put out regular 3-4 times a week. We'll put out information that'll pop up in your feed that you may find really useful. So I'd really recommend. We're doing a lot more in that area too. I'm trying to get as much information out as quickly and in many different ways as we can in those small sort of bite-sized chunks. Also in that newsletter, you'll see that there's a number of webinars coming up over the next 7 or 8 months. We'll be doing these question and answer ones at the end of last Tuesday of every month. We'll be having topic-based ones, usually the second Tuesday of every month between 6 and 7. We're finalizing, we're expecting to do our next one on cladding. We're just finalizing the speakers on that. And we'll have more information that we'll send out to you about that. And we'll also be sending you a recording of this webinar, the noise webinar, and any future webinars that take place. We'll send you a copy where you can find out more information and rewatch the video if you had any questions. Finally, on that note, I just want to thank the people that came along tonight, and particularly for Annie and John for taking part and taking the time out to help answer your questions. So thank you, Annie, and thank you, John, for taking part tonight.
It's been fun. It's been fun. I hope we get lots more questions next time, Mike. Maybe you should store some of these things up. But yeah, it's been fun.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot of stuff that I think a lot of people learned tonight, and so we'll keep doing these. And if you can't wait between now and then, like I said, send us an email at info@underoneroof.scot, and we'll get back to you with an answer. Thanks very much for attending tonight, and we'll see you all very soon. Bye now.